Okay, so welcome back. Now we're getting to the part where we do the actual monologues. Now the first monologue is from Henry V. It's the beginning of the play. It's a prologue, and Shakespeare uses a device called personification. Now, the ancient Greeks had choruses. Choruses basically talk about the main action of the play. And Shakespeare uses that in this particular play, but he also uses other devices. He uses rumor, or rather, he personifies. So he turns these non-human elements into people. Rumor, time, a wall, uses these wonderful theatrical devices. Here it's a chorus, which, as I say, the Greeks did do that, but Shakespeare utilizes that here. And the chorus here is imploring, nay, praying the audience to do their part to enact theatre, because as we mentioned before, theatre has three components: audience, actors, a play. So this is the part where we evoke the audience to do their part. So I'm not going to do this, we're going to read this, we'll read this together, and then we'll go over it of different elements that Shakespeare is bringing out. So it's done in verse, it's done in iambic pentameter, of course, and let's give this a whirl. Okay. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention, a kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire crouch for employment. But pardon, gentle soul, the flat unraised spirits that have dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object. Can this cockpit hold the vasty fields of France? Or may we cram within this wooden O the very casks that did affright the air at Agincourt? Oh, pardon. Since a crooked figure may attest in little place 1,000,000, and let us, ciphers to this great accompt, on your imaginary forces work. Suppose within the girdle of these walls are now confined 2 mighty monarchies, whose high upreared and abutting fronts the perilous narrow ocean parts asunder. Piece out our imperfections with your thoughts. Into 1,000 parts divide one man, and make imaginary puissance. Think, when we talk of horses, that you see them, printing their proud hoofs in the receiving earth. For 'tis your thoughts that now must deck our kings. Carry them here and there, jumping o'er times, turning the accomplishment of many years into an hourglass, for the which supply, admit me, chorus, to this history, who, prologue-like, your humble patience pray, gently to hear, kindly to judge our play. So you can see here that he's not just evoking the great war that's about to take place, or be presented as between England and France. He starts off by mentioning the grandiosity of that. But he stops himself, pardon, gentle soul, on the flat unraised spirits that are dead on this unworthy scaffold, this little wretched theatre. We're going to try to bring forth this great story. How can this little cockpit, this tiny little box, hold the vasty fields of France? This wooden O, this theatre shaped like an O, the globe theatre, Shakespeare's globe. How can we represent the global stories of conflict between France and England? He says, pardon, since a crooked figure, what does that mean? Well, if you write 1,000,000, you write down 1, comma, and then 6 zeros. So that little comma is a symbol of the million. So he analogizes that to the actors and the stage, that us, actors, ciphers to this great accompt, on your imagination has to work. Within the girdle of these walls, you've got to imagine that you see these monarchies. So you've got to do your part as well as we, the actors. You've got to piece out our imperfections where we fall short. You've got to have your suspension of disbelief. Into 1,000 parts divide one man. When you see one man, you see a battalion. When you see one horse, you see a fleet of horses. And so the chorus asks, begs, nay, prays the audience to do their part. And that sets up the audience to do their part so the actors can do theirs and they meet together. And then after the audience has been implored to do their part, next we come to the actors to do their part. And that, of course, is Hamlet's Speak the Speech, which is Act 3, Scene 2. Now, the backstory here is that Hamlet is seeking vengeance on the death of his father. He plays somewhat like a traditional revenge tragedy. The difference being that Hamlet, who has been called the most intelligent character in history, in literature, Harold Bloom, a wonderful writer who had a book called The Invention of the Human, which arguably was guilty of idolatry, but he does raise Shakespeare high. Anyway, so he's called Hamlet the most intelligent character. So he's a very intelligent character. Hamlet Sr. comes out at the beginning of the play to say that he was murdered by his brother, and he asks Hamlet to revenge that. But Hamlet questions, equivocates, goes back and forth. Is the ghost real? Is it evil? So basically goes back and forth. There's a line of Hamlet's that says, by thinking too finely upon the point, we lose the name of action. So for Hamlet to get to that point of action, he has to overcome his doubts. And how is he to do that? Well, the players, the acting troupe, comes to his castle. There's a play that they do that Hamlet writes a few additional words of dialogue. It is similar to what happened with Claudius, his uncle. It's about somebody who got the crown through illegitimate means. And so Hamlet has rewritten in such a way so that the guilt will be apparent to all. Now you have the advice that Hamlet is giving to actors, which is a precursor of Stanislavski, nay Strasberg, which was the American school of thought, of acting. That became the very strong school in mid-20th century through which most people filter what constitutes good acting. Stanislavski started the Moscow Art Theatre in 1896. It had a symbol of a seagull, because Anton Chekhov wrote the play The Seagull. They toured America in the 20s, inspired Lee Strasberg, Cheryl Crawford, and Harold Clurman to start the group theatre. And Harold Clurman wrote the book I mentioned before, The Fervent Years, which is about that. 10 years later, out of the group theatre came the Actors Studio, and of course out of that came very well-known American actors, from Marlon Brando through Al Pacino, De Niro. So, what's that have to do with Shakespeare? Has to do with Stanislavski, has to do with that mode of naturalism, which I think is, these words of Hamlet are very much a predecessor to. In any case, Hamlet wants these actors to act well. If they act well, he thinks he's going to be able to watch the king's reaction, the visceral reaction from seeing believable acting. He's going to prove to Hamlet that he is indeed guilty. And as another line in Hamlet puts it about the play, is that the play is the thing that will trap the conscience of the king. So that's a setup. So you go and do that first. You want these actors to act well. And this is your advice as someone on how to act well. So go do that and have fun with it. That's the reason why you're doing it, is to set up Claudius's guilt. And then come back here and I'll give it a shot. Okay. So, welcome back. Now I'm going to give this a shot. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounce it to you, trippingly on the tongue. But if you mouth it, as many of your players do, I had as lief the town crier spoke my lines. Nor do not saw the air too much with your hand thus, but use all gently. For in the very torrent, tempest, and as I may say, whirlwind of your passion, You must acquire and beget a temperance that may give it smoothness. Oh, it offends me to the soul to hear a robustious, periwig-pated fellow tear a passion to tatters, to very rags, to split the ears of the groundlings, who, for the most part, are capable of nothing but inexplicable dumb shows and noise. I'd have such a fellow whipped for doing Termagant, it out Herod's Herod. Pray you avoid it. Be not too tame neither, but let your own discretion be your tutor. Suit the action to the word to the action with especial observance, that you overstep not the modesty of nature. For anything so overdone is from the purpose of playing, whose end, both at the first and now, was and is to hold, as 'twere the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her own feature, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of time his form and pressure. Now this overdone or come tardy off cannot but make the judicious cry, the censure of which one must in your allowance o'erweigh a whole theatre of others. Oh, there be plays that I've heard praised, and that highly, not to speak it profanely, that having neither the accent of Christians, nor the gait of Christian, pagan, nor man, have so stuttered and bellowed that I thought some of nature's journeymen had made men, and not made them well. They imitated humanity so abominably. Oh, reform it altogether, and have those that play your clowns speak no more than is set down for them. For there be of them that will themselves laugh, to set 'em some quantity of untamed revellers to laugh too, though in the meantime some necessary question of the play be then to be considered. That's villainous, and shows a most pitiful ambition in the fool that uses it. Go make you ready. Okay, so for those who are close observers, you realize I messed up a couple of lines in the latter part. That sometimes happens in theatre. You've got to try to barrel through and just improvise. I didn't do a great job with that, but it's an interesting lesson for that. Okay. Now, the last monologue I'm going to do is in verse. Now, there are a couple of lines, you may be able to pick which ones they are, that are feminine endings, 11 syllables. This is Julius Caesar. It's Act 1, Scene 2, halfway through the scene. It's early in the play. Julius Caesar is a titular character, titular, Titular. The title is called Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar is interesting. Caesar is an interesting word. Caesar, which is pronounced in that time, I believe, Julio Caesar. Oh, sorry, Caesar. Julio Caesar. And Caesar, of course, we have the German Kaiser, and of course we have the Russian Tsar, which is either Tzar or Csar, CS, Caesar. So etymologically it's all tied together. Kaiser, Tsar, Caesar, king, ruler. So he's a ruler, but he's starting to get a little older. In the monologue itself, you hear he speaks of a physical lack that he has. So he's starting to break down, and he's aware of the rumors of his attempted assassination, the Ides of March. So he's getting aware of those who are trying to bring him down. And there's one fellow, Cassius, who I think reminds him of a young version of himself. So he's particularly leery of that. And he asks his young courtier, Antonio, to help him. So that's the setup. It's actually in a crowded, piazza, and so that's who he's speaking to and why. So go off and do it. Come back and I'll give it a try too. Okay, have fun. Okay, welcome back. Try Julius Caesar. Antonio. Let me have men about me that are fat, sleek-headed men, and such as sleep at nights. Young Cassius has a lean and hungry look. He thinks too much. Such men are dangerous. Would he were fatter. but I fear him not. Yet if my name were liable to fear, I do not know the man I should avoid so soon as that speare Cassius. He reads much. He is a great observer, and he looks quite through the deeds of men. He loves no play as thou dost, Antony. He hears no music. Seldom he smiles, and smiles in such a sort as if he mocked himself and scorned his spirit that could be moved to smile at anything. Such men as he be never at heart's ease, whiles they behold a greater than themselves, and therefore are they very dangerous. I rather tell thee what is to be feared than what I fear, for always I am Caesar. Come my right hand, for this ear is deaf, and tell me truly what thou thinkest of him. Okay, so I hope you had fun. I had fun. And hope you have some things to look up, some homework. And I hope you can help you in some way to loving Shakespeare, who I think is a pretty good writer. And I hope you get to appreciate that and have fun with that. So thank you for listening, and cheers. God bless.